Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our first episode after a little break. I hope you've all been well. I took some time off for a holiday, and then we had to navigate through some family health issues, but we're back, and I'm thrilled to share some exciting news with you all. We've undergone a transformation, evolving from the Aid podcast to now being called The Story Hollow. This rebrand isn't just a change of name, it's a whole new direction aimed at creating a place of belonging and community, a haven lovingly known as The Hollow. The Hollow is more than a podcast. It's a sanctuary designed to be a safe space where everyone can share a story and explore healing and growth at their own pace, anonymously, if they choose. We've updated our Patreon page to reflect this new ethos. You can check out the rebranded Patreon page at patreon.com/thestoryhollow, which now offers journaling prompts designed specifically to help people get started on their healing journey. I'm also now offering free trials to the Patreon space, so if you're interested, take a look and come be part of the foundation of something special. It's now time to talk about what the story in this episode will be, and I anticipate this will be a 3-part series, maybe 4. We'll be walking the steps down memory lane of a fertility journey, and there might be some tears in this one because that journey is mine and my wife's. We talked back and forth on this topic for a while, and decided to share it openly with the world, because as we were going through it, we didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. At the time, we believed there was nothing conventional about a fertility journey, much less for 2 lesbians, and we felt incredibly alone. Our hope with this series is that if you're going through a fertility journey yourself, the relatability factor helps you. Just knowing someone else's story is similar to yours, and that you're not alone. We also hope that you do find someone to talk to about it if you can. If you're not going through that journey, then we hope this series gives you some insight and food for thought, because chances are likely that you know someone who actually is or has gone through this journey themselves. The potential trigger tags for this episode, and series for that matter, are heavy. As we tell our story, you'll hear about miscarriages, abortion, references to death, isolation during a pandemic, and the stages of grief. I'm sure there's some more. There are also some graphic descriptions of some events, but we wanted to tell this story in its full truth. So with that, welcome back to my wife, Tara. For those of you who have been watching or listening, Tara was here a few episodes ago, maybe even a couple seasons ago at this point. She told us her coming out story. So Tara's been here before. As we roll through this, I'm going to give some preface just as a warning. You might hear dogs barking. You might see random spontaneous cat run through. So just, roll with it. We have 4 pets in this house. It's our life. We have 4 pets in this house. It's always a zoo. So you might get lucky and see one of the animals. But if you hear some of the barks, apologize. All right. So with that, we're going to roll into this story. So let's go all the way back. We're going to time travel backwards to pre-2016. Tara and I were living in the state of Texas. We lived outside of super progressive Austin. Even if you're not from Texas, most people in the country know Austin is the blue dot in the sea of red, even though there are many other blue dots in the state of Texas. But Austin is now very famous for it. Yeah. So we lived in a little rural town just outside of the greater Austin area. Significantly more red than the blue area around it.
For sure.
But that's where our house was. So, we talked about having kids. We went back and forth on it so many times for years. So to give some additional context, Tara and I are celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. 5 years married, 15 together. And we spent quite a bit of time talking about will we or won't we have kids, and all of the reasons why we would or wouldn't. So we're going to share some of those things with you guys today, just to kind of give you a very real look into some of the conversation that took place for us, I think it's probably good practice to have these kinds of in-depth conversations with whomever you are with, whatever partner you're with, just because it really set the groundwork, I think, and a solid foundation for us expectation-wise. It really helped with alignment, and there were some things that we were misaligned on that it really helped us kind of bring to the surface and sort out before we even brought children into this world. So, let's time travel back. So I'll start first with why I did and did not want kids, right? So kind of my struggle going back and forth. So I didn't want kids originally because like it was complicated. I wanted kids, but I also didn't want to give up things. I didn't want to sacrifice a lot of my comforts and
that's
and
the
hobbies.
thing. Like, we did want them. We didn't want to sacrifice things.
Yeah, and like I wasn't gonna, you know, hire a nanny. I couldn't afford one. I just did. I didn't want to give up. I just didn't want to give up what I had. Like I got to sleep in. I got to wake up and play video games for hours on end. I was playing basketball. I was playing softball. And I loved that. Like I didn't want to sacrifice that free time. Oh yeah. Game nights with friends. We used to host game nights all the time. And you know, when we were younger, we used to get drunk. And if you are familiar with children, they don't give a fuck what is going on with your hangover. They just want your love and attention. And when you're hungover, you don't really feel like giving that to anyone. So it was, you know, and that didn't happen a lot, but like when we had our game nights, like I wanted my recovery time. I wanted to go out and eat a really big, bulky breakfast to make myself feel better and then come home and nap again. Like, you know, and that was when we were in our, you know, 20s. So it's a little bit different than when you're in your 30s, because we don't do that anymore, right? We barely even consume alcohol now. So it's a very different lifestyle. And I just didn't want to give that stuff up. I was very comfortable. With the way my life was. I was happy. I loved it. And then I did want kids though, because, you know, my childhood was super fucked up. And if you've listened to this podcast in the past, you know exactly why. But I wanted to be different. I did want to be a parent. I wanted to love a child so deeply and unconditionally. And I did want to be responsible for them, which it's a lot of responsibility, but I did want to be responsible for their well-being. And I wanted to, you know, bring a child into the world so that I could raise a good person. And I know that obviously, you know, nature versus nurture, and there's only so much I can do as a person, because ultimately this kid is their own person, right? You know, you can't shape them into who you want them to be entirely. Like, you can raise them with good morals and ethics and a sense of integrity, but you can't dictate really what their interests are, or you know, who they're going to actually be. And you can't protect them from all of the environments around them either. All you can really do is just do your best to guide them and instill a good sense in them. And so I wanted to do that. And I wanted to be the parent that I never had. So, you know, I waffled on it. I went back and forth, and that was kind of my journey with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. Like, not even so much like, I loved to sleep, and I loved to nap, and I loved to sleep in, and we enjoyed like packing up and like going away for the weekend, just like on a whim, or out to eat, out to breakfast, out to lunch, or really grocery shopping whenever we wanted. Like, and all of that changes when you have kids.
It does.
Like, you can't just do anything on a whim anymore. Like, once you have kids,
and certainly not with twins either. Like, we have to meticulously plan everything. Now, we didn't plan for twins, mind you, but
we did not. No, one it was one child.
Yeah, we planned for just the one, and then we wound up buy one get one.
but not
It's
free.
it was not free. It was not free. Oh God.
It was buy
Oh,
one, get one, but you paid for two.
oh God. It was. We'll talk about all the financial stuff soon. Uh,
And I also think
but
our
yeah. So.
biggest, like one of our biggest things was the fact that we did live in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and both of our families were up in the Northeast. So I think that was a big topic of conversation for us when we were deciding whether or not we wanted to have kids, is where we wanted to raise them.
Yeah.
And we know that Texas really wasn't the place we wanted to raise kids,
Yeah.
especially for two lesbians in a very red state. And even at
Which.
that point, the politics weren't what they are today. So
Yeah. Yeah. So for context, right? Because I know I've got some listeners that are outside of the United States. Although you've probably heard about the fuckery going on here. So pre 2016, that was pre Donald Angry Mango fuckface. And he, before he even started preaching his division and his pure hatred for, people like us, the politics in Texas, if you were paying attention, were already pretty dicey. We had corrupt politicians that people knew were corrupt. We had gerrymandering that was pretty bad. We had the Trumpism politics was already kind of taking place in Texas. There was a lot of legislation that was super unclear or straight up unfriendly to us and people like us, people of our community. And so we had already decided that Texas, if we were going to have kids, we were going to move out of Texas. And that comes from someone who used to be diehard Texan. Like I used to be, we're the only state that can fly our flag at the same level as the United States because we used to be our own country. Yeah. I was that way. I know I was that way. I was an obnoxious, arrogant Texan, and
you were a Texan.
I was a Texan. It's an identity. It really was. It was an identity, and I know I was like that. So coming from me as someone, reformed Texan, I guess, I still, there's still parts of me that was like, I would be like, God bless Texas, right? Like, and I'm not even religious, right? But I would belt that song at the top of my fucking lungs. And it was just really that nationalism kind of mentality. Texas, I think, fell easy prey to that when Donald Trump came into power because we already had that. We were already like, we were our own country once, and so I think, a lot of Texans kind of fell into that really easily. It was comfortable. It was very familiar because we did that with our own state for so long. And I knew that we didn't want to raise kids in that environment. I knew the education system was starting to go the other way. Like when I was in high school, I went to a great high school. I had all these different opportunities for extracurriculars and different classes. You could have trained to be an engineer at my school. You could have trained to be a car mechanic. You could have trained to be in an actual community theater program. You could have trained to be in the ROTC. You could have been trained to be a nurse. Like we had all these different programs at our school. And in our district, you could have transferred to another one of the high schools that had different programs. So we had like a fine arts program in a different high school, and you could have transferred to that school. You could have been an in-district transfer to that high school so that you could specialize in that program. So it was really cool, and it was very much set up at the time to help kids succeed in different careers or just give them a leg up into college. And so I went to a very good school. It's not like that anymore. Their education system is kind of fallen apart a little bit, and it continues to fall apart. So it was just one of those things where we decided Texas is not the place for kids. So we made the call to decide to move. We moved up to New England, again, closer to family, better education, better future, it seemed like, for our children.
Yeah.
We did not know at the time that Donald Trump was going to get elected. That was super surprising. And then, now we're sitting in round fucking 2, and I feel a little bit of guilt about bringing children into the world the way that it is today, but I had no way of really knowing that that was going to be the case. And I suppose it gives me a fire in my soul to fight for that, because I'm not only just fighting for me, I'm fighting for you and other people in our community. I'm fighting for a better world for our kids. So
yeah, a little happier that we do live in a very blue state.
Yeah.
So, and we're not in that deep south where
we are surrounded by other blue states.
We are.
So little Canada, take us, please. We're not like the rest, I promise. No, there are poor people who are stuck in some of these red states, and I feel for them. That's part of the reason that, I kind of feel like I gotta fight too. Is because we are super fortunate, but there are people who are not, and there are people who are stuck in these red states that are they are being forced to find out, and they did not fuck around.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who want to get out but can't. They can't afford it. And I think if we had waited and if we tried to do it now, I don't think we would have been able to. I'm so thankful we did it when we did.
Yeah. The timing was good for us, I think.
It
was. Okay, so we talked about, will we, won't we, why we did and didn't. Some of the other important conversations that we had were around parenting, right? Parenting styles, parenting approaches, that kind of stuff. So Tara and I agreed we wanted to do gentle parenting.
Did.
And for those of you who don't actually understand what gentle parenting is, please hear me when I tell you, it is not the same as permissive parenting. They are two very different things. Permissive parenting is where you basically let your kid make all of the decisions, and that's not what gentle parenting is. Gentle parenting is parenting with boundaries. It is almost a little bit of fuck around, find out, right? So we let our kids, we would tell them, if you climb on that, there is a chance you will fall. And if you fall, there is a chance you will get hurt. And then we'd say, I would recommend you don't do that. And then we would let them make their choice, right? So if they climbed on it and the thing that happened, that we said would happen, happened. And then we're like, well, we did tell you that would happen. We would love them. We would make sure they were okay. And then we explain again the lesson, this is why we said don't climb on that. Because if you climb on that, you could fall. And if you fall, you could get hurt. And so it's more about educating them about consequences to the decisions that they're making. So there is a very big difference between gentle parenting and permissive parenting. So Tara and I opted for gentle parenting route. And we have a lot of fun with gentle parenting too. It's a lot of, we're like, well, see, I did tell you that would happen. And then our kids are starting to pick up on that. They'll gentle parent each other, which is really funny. We'll hear our children be like, oh, well, that was not a kind thing to do, or that was not a kind thing to say. And then they'll apologize to one another, which is super great because they're 3, right? So that was
to accept each other's apology or not accept apology.
Yes. They've learned how to give space, and I need space right now versus you're in my space, please leave my space. So it's very interesting to see them gentle parent each other, and they gentle parent us sometimes too. There was the other day, I was super frustrated with something. I don't even remember what it was, and my daughter came up to me and she put her hand on my back and she goes, "Mommy, it'll be okay. Don't worry." It's okay, kid, you got it. And it's just so funny, but. We decided that
you needed to breathe.
Oh, she did. She told me that too. She's like, "Mommy, just breathe." Okay. I was like, what do you do when a 3.5-year-old tells you just breathe? Oh, you listen. You're just like, okay, 3.5-year-old is telling me to breathe. I'm just gonna breathe. It's very humbling. It's very humbling to have a 3.5-year-old
Yes.
tell you to just breathe. But it's just interesting. So we had said, gentle parenting was the route we were gonna go, and we had agreed on most everything in terms of parenting styles. So Tara and I had been teachers in the past, so we had a lot of education around, just kids in general, behavioral issues, developmental behaviors, what was the developmental appropriate behavior when. So it gave us a lot of very good expectations.
Yeah.
And granted, it's very different from a teaching setting with multiple children to just, your own kids in your own home. It's very different circumstances, but the practical knowledge still applies. So that was really helpful for us.
Yes.
And we were very aligned on a lot of those types of approaches and things that we would use, except for one. And so Tara and I had adamant disagreements about how to handle bullying because we came face to face with the, recognition that our children would probably be bullied at some point in their lives for having two moms. And so for me, I thought it was really important to empower our children how to handle bullies themselves. I thought it was really important to prepare them for not only if they were bullied, but if they saw someone bullying someone else, because I have a very strong sense of justice. I was that kid that was in high school that if I saw somebody getting in a fight and it was like 3-on-1, I don't even know what the other person did, but I am jumping in to at least make the fight more even. So like I was that kind of person. And to me, having been bullied, because I was bullied for being a lesbian, for being suspected lesbian. I didn't even know I was gay at the time. So it's wild. Didn't even know that I was a lesbian, but they supposedly knew. Just based on the stereotype, right? And this was literally their reasoning. They jumped me after school, after a basketball practice, because I played too many sports, and therefore I must be gay. I don't understand the logic. I know it's a stereotype, right? But so they made that assumption and they jumped me, and it was like five girls that jumped me in the hallway after basketball practice. And having been bullied, I personally felt that the only way that you stand up to a bully is by standing up to a bully. That's the only way you really stop them, is you give them a reason to not want to bully you anymore. When they realize that it's no longer easy to bully you, they stop. So I punched, and they weren't going to stop. And so the only reason they stopped is because I actually fought back and I punched one and I broke her nose. And then they all took off and scattered. So that was where my stance on bullying was. Like, if our kids got bullied, don't throw the first punch, right? But if they throw the first punch at you, or they push you, they put hands on your body, all bets are off, right? Now you can defend yourself, right? If you can't defend yourself with words, you may now defend yourself with your body. And Tara did not agree with that philosophy at all. So we disagreed about it a lot. So what was your stance?
I mean, my stance was, if you're being bullied, you need to go tell someone. You gotta tell your teacher, your principal, your counselor, your parents. Like, just turn around and walk away, kind of thing.
Doesn't work.
I understand that now. Things are different now than they were, obviously, when I was growing up. I was not bullied as a child, or throughout me going to school, so I never really dealt with bullies.
Tara was the popular girl in high school.
So I didn't I didn't really understand. But like now times are different. Like if I can empower my child to stand up for themselves or somebody else, then that's what I'm going to do. Kids these days are not afraid of getting in trouble because schools, they do nothing about bullying. And you know what? If I can teach my child, well, probably not me teaching them
I got
to
this.
stand up for themselves. If you can teach them to stand up for themselves,
Just need to teach them how to throw a good punch. All you need is one good punch to land and it's done.
then that's what they need to do. And like that's where I'm at. Because kids are just not afraid of consequences anymore.
People in general are not afraid of consequences anymore. And there's a whole, Tara and I have a whole tangent on that. We might do an episode on that later. I don't know. But that is where we disagreed in our parenting philosophy. And
I think that was the only thing, though.
It was the only thing. It was the only thing we disagreed on. And then, we decided that we would proceed forth. We would put a pin in that particular topic, and we would handle it on a circumstantial basis as it happened. We didn't want that particular disagreement to be the reason we didn't have kids. And this was after we kind of decided, yes, formally we are going to have kids. And we talked about... So we talked about the financials. I won't go into too many details just because it's a mess, but there was insurance nonsense that was happening. We had to spend hours and hours and hours on the phone with insurance, and I'm going to downplay this significantly just in the interest of time. But the wording in our policy had said, like, they only cover fertility treatments if there's an issue with the male partner's sperm. And since there was no male in our relationship, I wasn't sure how much shit the insurance was going to give me over that. So we partially knew that was part of the reason we needed to move. And regarding the financial situation, I wasn't making a lot of money in Texas. The cost of living there theoretically is lower, but I would say we are far better off up here than we were in Texas. And it was just one of those situations where I knew, because having kids is expensive, and I don't think anybody really prepares
that was
you.
Your biggest thing.
It was that was my biggest, once we decided to have kids
about when we don't have enough money saved.
I did.
How are we going to afford this, that, and the other thing? That was a very big topic. But do you remember what I told you?
If we don't do it now, we'll never do it.
No, you'll think of a million reasons not to do it.
Well, yeah, that was part of the whole thing. You kept telling me, if you don't do it now, you won't do it ever. And you said you'll keep thinking of a million reasons why not to.
Why you can't. Yeah.
And again, this was after we'd already decided that, yes, we were going to have kids. But I got into this, next level thinking of myself where I was like, okay, we've decided, yes, we're going to have kids. We are aligned on all of these other categories. We are aligned on schooling, discipline approaches, parenting approaches. We're aligned on all of this. And then I was like, okay, but money. we don't have a lot of that, right? And so we moved, right? And I doubled my salary from Texas to where we live now. And the cost of living, honestly, is probably a little bit lower up here than it is in Texas. But I make significantly more. So we actually wound up coming out ahead in terms of income. But in my mind, I also was still I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money to save. Kids are crazy expensive. I don't have enough money to save up into my 401k, let alone start saving for a college fund if our kids even decide to go to college, because I didn't go to college and I do really well for myself. So, I think there's an element of luck and hard work and discipline that comes into that. And I think there's, absolutely the avenue of going and pursuing an education, right? I'm exploring pursuing continuing education now. whereas I didn't when I was younger. And I think that however you obtain that education or however you obtain that experience in life, I think all of that's valid. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to force my kids to go to college, especially if things keep climbing in cost the way that they have
Yeah.
been. I was like, I'll never be able to afford that no matter what I do. So I kept panicking because I was like, I don't have this societal prescribed like checklist fulfilled. Society tells me if I'm going to have kids, I need to make sure that I have job security so I don't lose my job. So I have, you know, that again, that steady income, that I have money saved away or disposable income that I can, you know, put in a college fund and this, that, and the other. And then you have your insurance premiums that go up because you're now covering an entire family versus just yourself. And it was just a whole thing. It was a whole thing. And so I kept like, and I did the math, which made it even worse because I calculate everything out and I budgeted everything out. And I was like, Tara, we can never afford to have kids. We just cannot, like, I'm looking at the numbers. We cannot afford to have children. And so she kept telling me, you know, we're just going to have to do it. If we want to do this, we're going to have to just commit to doing it. And there's never going to be a perfect time to just start. And I listened. And she was right. She was right. And we figured it out. That is something that Tara and I have always been able to do, is just figure stuff out. We just make it work, and we find ways to do what we need to do. And that's what we did here. We found ways to do what we need to do. And I'm not saying have kids with no money. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying, because I swear to you, you will need money. Kids are so damn expensive. They're so damn expensive. So if you like money, and you like being able to, you know, go do a whole bunch of things, like, and this is for like the average Joe, right? Like, there are people who are obviously more well off than Tara and I are, and this is not even a factor for them. But if you're like the average person and you are thinking about having kids, please understand they are expensive as hell. So I was like, okay, I gotta just get past this hurdle. So we pulled the trigger. We said, yep, we're gonna do this. Well, one vial of sperm was $3,000. And so it was like, oh, this is quite a bit of money for one shot. You got one shot at it with the one vial because they basically use the whole thing. And Tara and I didn't know anything about fertility. And so when we were kind of researching some of this, and we were like, we actually need to find a professional. So we found a doctor, and we started going through that whole process. Tara, however, had a very unique approach for finding doctors. So she was just go ahead.
No, you were very, I have to, like, you find someone and then you research literally everything about that person or doctor's office or whatever. And I'm just like typing into Google fertility clinics near me. Like, the first one that pops up, I'm like, okay, that sounds good.
Tara didn't read reviews about the clinics.
I left it up to you. And you did find us an amazing doctor.
I did, because I am good at what I do. I like to research things. I research things very well and meticulously. I'm a Virgo rising. It's like in my blood and DNA. I have to make sure that the investment that I'm about to make is solid. So I meticulously combed through multiple different clinics and profiles of doctors to find one that I thought was going to be a good fit. And we found this one clinic, and they were very meticulous. They had us do like therapy profiles, like mental health profiles. We had to answer a bunch of questions about our mental health. We had to answer questions about our parenting specifics and styles and family histories and all of that before we even did anything. And we had to do like intake paperwork, I guess, is the best way to describe it. It's like intake
Yeah.
paperwork for fertility treatments. So we did all of that, and we go to the clinic for like our first
Consultation.
consultation. Yeah, that's the term I needed. The consultation appointment. And we get there, and they call my name. And I'm like, okay, so, I've been involved in this whole process before. They made me fill out all these forms just like Tara did, even though Tara was carrying. And, we went back, and the nurse is like talking to me. She's just kind of making conversation, asking me some questions, and they're like non-specific questions. So it wasn't like, are you carrying the baby or anything like that. Like, it was just conversations about like the journey and pregnancy and stuff. And, having been involved in it, I could answer these questions. And so then she takes me back to get my blood drawn. And I remember thinking, like, that's really weird. Why are you drawing my blood? Like, I'm not carrying this baby. I don't understand. But, these are doctors. Maybe there's a reason for this. I don't know. And so I let her take my blood, and she takes about 2 vials, and she says something to me, and I forget what it was, but she says something to me that kind of like cues my brain, and was like, this woman thinks that you are the one that is going to be pregnant. You should say something. And so I was like, oh no, my wife is carrying. My wife is going to be the one that's doing the treatments. I'm going to be the one that gives them to her. And she goes, oh, and like I could see her brain working. Like, I feel like I just literally threw a wrench in her brain, and I could feel it stop. She was like, well, we don't need your blood then. And I was like, oh, great. You've already got it, though. Cool. So I go back out into the waiting area, and I tell Tara what happened, and Tara proceeds to tell me why this happened to me.
I don't know if I really made the connection right then, but when I was filling out the forms on their website, I put you as the primary account holder person. And I think to them, that equated to you being the one who was going to be pregnant. Because on their forms, in my defense, there was no specific place that asked, like, who was going to be the one to carry. Like, that wasn't just it was a generic form. So it's not like, because we are a same-sex couple, there wasn't a place to put anything. So when I put you as the primary account holder, that to them just signified that you were gay. I got a good laugh out of it, though.
Oh, I'm glad you did. I don't like needles, and they stabbed me twice. So thanks for that.
Didn't they also like take your weight and all? Like, they literally
they did the full like physical markup. They took my weight, my height, they were running tests, and I just was like, okay, I guess this is normal, sure. It was not normal.
No.
But
no.
So to Tara's point about like there's not a demarcation on the form that says like, put carrying person's name here or whatever. So if you are a member of the LGBTQIA community, you will know what I'm about to describe. It's that feeling where when you walk into a place and you kind of feel like everything stops for a second, and everybody kind of looks at you, and they're trying to like figure out, are you or aren't you? That's that very subtle feeling, that like underlying energy that exists. That wasn't at this clinic. We didn't feel that at all. They were very welcoming, very open, could not fucking care less that we were a same-sex couple. They were totally fine with that. And it was an all-women's clinic, and it was very comforting. The environment was very soothing, it was very welcoming, very accepting. Like, it was just peaceful. Yeah. We didn't feel anything like that. All of their forms were very much like that too, which is, again, it's these little subtleties that, most straight people don't understand. But, when you pick up a medical form and it's like, father's name, mother's name, whatever, right? Like that sucks. It's like these little tiny daggers, right? And so to read these forms and have it just be like parent 1, parent 2, or, primary insurance holder or whatever, right? Like it was just nice. It was just nice.
Yeah.
It did contribute to that little confusion though of me getting poked. So
we had the absolute best doctor with the
oh
best
god, our doctor
bedside
was amazing.
manner.
Our doctor was amazing. So I'm not gonna give her name publicly, but if you are curious and you are in the New England area and you are looking for a fabulous clinic with fabulous doctors, I will give you the clinic name and the doctor's name specifically if you DM me on my Patreon, and I will let you know. I will share that information with you. You can also DM me on my Blue Sky account if you'd like. It's also at the Story Hollow. So that being said, that was kind of our journey into finding like the doctor, right? I think the one thing that we haven't covered yet for this particular episode is kind of like the who's gonna carry situation. So every couple is different, right? Every couple has their own circumstances, right? There's surrogacy, there's deciding who's gonna carry what. Some people do reciprocal IVF. So for us, I had known from a very early age I did not want to carry a baby. I have never had any desire to be pregnant. A lot of women do. I was not one of those women. I knew I didn't want to be pregnant, but I wanted kids. And so for me, when I knew this at like 19. I had kind of come to terms already with I will probably adopt, if anything, or I will save up money and I will go through a surrogate because I don't want to carry a baby. I don't want to be pregnant. I just don't want my body to experience that. And I had two reasons for that. One of which is incredibly selfish, and one of which was maybe selfish depending on how you look at it, but came out of a sense of self-preservation. So the first one was I was very vain when I was younger, significantly less so now, but I was very, very vain when I was younger. I looked good, and I loved the way that I looked. I was, like I said, very active in sports. Obviously I have a different understanding now of what a healthy body is. Healthy bodies come in all different types and sizes and things like that. Therapy is awesome. I recommend it for everyone who is struggling with anything, or even if you're not. Sounding boards are great. So I at the time had this viewpoint that I looked really good. I was, picturesque fitness, right? I had like tiny little abs, right? I couldn't find abs now if I, even split myself open. So I had this notion of looking really good and really fit. And I didn't want to lose that to being pregnant because I knew that your body would change significantly during pregnancy, and even after pregnancy. And so I didn't want to do that. The other self-preservation reason was I have a heart condition. And so I was already going to be high risk for a pregnancy anyway. And I didn't want to try and bring a life into this world and then potentially leave it. Because that sense of almost abandonment, that wouldn't have set well with me. So I didn't want to do it for those two reasons. And so there was Tara on the other side of that coin who absolutely wanted to be pregnant.
I did. I wanted to experience pregnancy. Like, crazy thought of mine. Like, I wanted to feel the kicks and the movements and like pregnancy cravings and like literally every part of pregnancy I wanted to experience. And so like for us it was super easy to figure out who was going to carry. Not everyone it will be that easy, but because I wanted to experience literally everything that came with pregnancy.
And I wanted nothing to do with it.
I think the only part that like concerned me, I guess, was obviously the weight gain. But I get over that really quickly.
I had all these concerns about weight gain, and then I wound up gaining weight anyway after the kids were born. So it didn't fucking matter for me. We'll talk about all that stuff in the next episode when we actually kind of go through some of the pregnancy stuff. So yeah, I think that was everything we really wanted to touch on in this episode as we kind of work our way through this timeline. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So this is probably a good time to kind of wrap it all up. Next episode, we will talk about the next step in that timeline, which was learning more about fertility, because Tara and I were actually very ignorant. We didn't understand a lot about it. So we'll learn more about the fertility. Good. We'll walk you through some of the stuff that we learned and that experience. We'll walk you through some of the insurance struggles that we had there. We'll walk you through what types of types of fertility that we did, and we'll kind of walk through the pregnancy stuff. We'll talk about finding a donor, and I think that's probably going to be enough to cover that entire episode too.
Yeah,
like I said, this is going to be at least a 3-part series. It is a lot. This might be a 4-part series, if I'm being honest, because I don't know if we're going to be able to tell. That timeline was a large part of this journey.
2.5 years.
2.5 years, yeah.
Through fertility from beginning to us getting pregnant, basically.
Yeah.
Was 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's a lot happened in this 2.5 years.
A lot happened. Oh man, you want to talk about like a sped up condensed timeline, and that was during COVID. So it'll be full of interesting stories and perspectives. So it's probably going to be a 4-part series. So tune in for the next episode where we'll kind of dive into some of that. I will give a preface as a warning. That's where things are going to start to get a little bit heavier. There is some funny stuff in that journey, but there was also some of the heavier stuff. That's the timeline portion where we had some of our miscarriages. So it'll be a little heavy, but we also have some humorous parts of that journey to share with you as well. So it was definitely some ups and downs as part of that. I'm going to let Tara give a little spoiler teaser for what is in the next episode in terms of the hilarity, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so a little teaser where I was banned from finding a donor for us because of all of the horrible circumstances of things I found as I was going through different sperm donors.
We'll like I said, we'll leave it at that. But Tara did get banned from finding a donor. Just banned. I banned her from doing it because of some of the stuff that she was finding. So tune in next time to kind of hear a little bit more about that. And we will continue this story in part 2. All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks for listening.